So, is Nick from Yuma here? I hope he is, because, I didn't want to do this in front of the other guys, but might as well just do it now. I'm going to need your guys' Chat Pro badges on my desk by the end of the day. Let's not make a scene. Let's not make this harder than it is.
Rotate them every day.
$46,000. But you know, in the end of the day, it's his fault. It's his fault.
Look who flops a set. An Andy with a straight flush draw. Oh, we're going to see some fireworks. Especially after that hand with Armenian Mike. I don't think Andy is in any mood to play slow.
No. 3 flop. They're only 3 flop. It's only 3 flop. Anyway. Flop is. What did Chris have?
There was one other player in the pot.
He called in for 17,000 and 17,000.
3 flop?
He called 17,000.
What?
With king 3 and diamond. Flop count 4, 5. 5, 6, 7. 5, 6, 7. No. 4, 5, 6.
He's going to bet it.
Something like that.
It wasn't bad. He was trying
He's
to
close to half the deck of outs.
That's what I'm like. Why would call? You didn't call. You probably would 3-bet it like usual, and then the
He
raise
did.
wasn't
He
enough.
3-bet 1,600.
Any 8, any 4, any heart.
In between cold.
You might think the 9 and 7 are live, but they're not.
And then he called.
And then Chris reshoved.
Oh, he wanted to just go ahead.
And then Mike has king.
Mike taking the king. You nearly marked. Arby, you nearly marked.
We have a huge turn coming.
Well, that is a monstrous flop. And lucky for us as viewers, they are playing deep stacked no limit hold'em, which means we don't just have to get it in. That's not the only option, which in most tournament scenarios or a shorter stack cash game is. But we're playing super deep, and we've got Garrett and Andy who are used to playing these stacks. There's a lot of questions to be had here, though. Yeah. There's a lot of different ways that you can play this hand from Garrett or Andy's perspective. Garrett's donk seems to make plenty of sense. Dunking is not a common play in no limit hold'em, but when you're 4 ways, the board is like this and super wet, and you have such a strong hand, it makes plenty of sense to donk. You don't want this thing to check through.
It's not even just super wet; it's super wet and low cards. So Andy is almost always going to miss this board. Turns out he didn't this time.
Not this time,
and often everyone's going to miss this board. It's going to check through, and then the people who are checking to Andy could have made a big draw on the turn. You just don't want to give a free card here. You want to build a pot.
Right. So it makes plenty of sense to lead. I think Andy's decision to raise looks pretty simple and standard, but actually kind of interesting once you dive into it a little bit. Like, do you have fold equity when Garrett donks into 4 players or three other players? Do you need fold equity when you have a hand this strong? These are the 2 questions, right? Because I think the answer to the first one is mostly no.
Agreed.
I think when Garrett donks, he has minimum flush draw. That's his weakest holding. He has 2 pair plus, which is usually 5-6 suited in the sets. I don't think he has any straights. I guess that's good for Andy. Called out of the small blind.
I mean, I guess he could have like 5-4 suited or something like that with a pair and a straight draw.
Maybe you could have that 6-4 or 5-4 suited.
Yeah.
But the weakest hands in that range are 6-4, 5-4, and flush draws. None of which we're gonna fold as Andy, and the flush draws are a real problem for us. We don't want to inflate the pot against those hands. Obviously, there's a couple cards that are really good for us, but mostly those hands have us in jail.
Yeah. One of the good things about raising, though, as Andy is, assuming we don't get re-raised, and by the way, this is a hand that is at least a candidate for
We're going to talk about that.
Put a lot more money in. But one of the good things is by making it 2,800 right here, if Garrett calls like he does, if we don't improve on the turn, we don't have to keep putting money in. We can actually put $0 more in this pot and see if we get there or not.
Yep.
That's kind of awesome. And you might say, well, he could just call a bet on the turn and not get the same result. But if he were to improve on the turn, he can build the pot then. So he gets to make a bigger pot when he gets there on the turn and keep the pot smaller when he doesn't if he wants to.
That's a nice thought, but one problem is with the range that we outlined for Garrett, there might be kind of a lot of 3-bets in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of very strong hands in that range.
Agreed.
And a lot of them want to 3-bet. And Garrett's actual hand is one of those hands that if I were in a seat, I would really want to 3-bet. I know pocket 6s are out there, but that's really the only hand beating us because Andy opened +1. He doesn't have 4-7. He doesn't have 4 deuce.
And we can't live looking for monsters under the bed. Pocket 6s are out there, but so is pocket 3s. Maybe pocket 4s. big flush draws like the ace queen of hearts, etc.
Combo draws like Andy has.
Like, come on. I would feel very comfortable putting in a raise here as Garrett, unless I had a very particular strategy in mind or tactic against Andy.
Right. I came up with a theory on the podcast. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's kind of fun to think
It's a
about.
good theory.
Garrett and
Sounding.
Andy are playing each other constantly, as most of you know. They're playing an iterated game. They're always playing these super deep stack cash games. Garrett, as the audience believe, Garrett's a better player. Jonathan and I do, at least. And Garrett probably thinks that as well. And he may think that overtime is just a better idea in these super deep spots to put more money in later in hands against Andy when there's more information, because he's going to have a bigger and bigger edge the further in the hand they get. And that could be an overall strategy that he has. That's possible.
It could be that. It also could be that he just thinks Andy's the kind of guy who's just going to, now once he raises on the flop, is just going to pile in money on turns and rivers, whether he gets there or not.
It could also just be for balance. You just have to have this hand in your range to call sometimes.
Yeah.
And Garrett does. It's not a bad play. I would just really want to 3-bet. That's what I desire to do.
I would be 3-betting a lot here.
Yeah. If you want to get 3-bet, do it on Nitrogen Sports, because it's great to get 3-bet on Nitrogen Sports, especially in the Poker Guys tournament, because you're like, even though I got 3-bet, I'm in the greatest tournament in the world, so that's fine.
I mean, there's this massive overlay every single time it's played. It's monthly. It's unbelievable.
It's one of the best things that's ever happened to humanity, and you can only access it by using the link in our pinned tweet when you sign up for Nitrogen. We'll see you there.
It's like electricity, the car, and this.
Yeah.
Thank you for 5 minutes.
Bink.
Mike.
Wow. Andy binks the offsuit 8.
I don't want to for 1,000,000%. I don't know my time and I'm
Wasting his time with everything.
I know somebody is not ace queen, but I'm thinking that way, you know, I don't care either pocket.
Doors, get to have doors and that fast.
You guys in there.
Going down, the red label.
Not even 50-50. I'm thinking I got 40-60. I'm gonna have the 40%, but still, now it's 0%.
Andy has overbet the pot by about 50% of the pot. So this pot is now $27,000.
I win second one.
Oh, the second.
Andy has the absolute nuts.
Yeah, when there's 4 players all in.
You asked me, I said,
And a straight is incredibly unlikely, given the way this action has gone. The question is, would Andy do this with missed hearts, right? Let's say instead of 9-7 of hearts, he had Queen Jack of hearts. Would he do the same thing here and miss on the river and go all in? Has to be what Garrett's thinking now. And now Andy's sizing on the turn makes a lot of sense. He left a pot-sized bet behind. This was his plan the whole way.
A little bit over 30.
It's 10, 20. $30. This is 2000, or this is, yeah, 2032. 32.5, I think.
And look how intently Garrett is watching Andy right now. He is watching every little detail. Garrett is an expert at live reads.
It's 325 here.
The way he's talking, the way he's counting the chips.
33,325.
So just recently, Andy ran a really similar line against Garrett where he bluffed just like this on the river. He had ace high. Garrett had a really similar holding. He had 2 pair, which essentially beat all bluffs, and he was able to call that time. This time, the answer is fold.
Cowboy movie.
And he finds the fold.
Well, there goes Garrett with another above the rim play against Andy in a deep stack cash game. He gets away from it. I know there's a 4 straight on the board.
Yeah.
Still, let's go through this. All right, let's talk about the turn. The most interesting thing is certainly Andy's sizing. He goes real big here on the turn. This could be a holistic strategy. We've seen Andy size really large in the past. Does it feel too big? I mean, is it too much? I mean, it's the ultimate best dream card he could possibly have.
It feels too big to me, yes. Now, you may say to yourself, Garrett's either got 2 pair plus, most of the time anyway, like very strong value hands, made hands, right? Yep. And really big draws. And if you size it big enough, you're going to force the really big draws to either fold or raise because they don't feel they can just call out of position. Like a big flush draw, I don't know if it can just call here. Maybe the nut flush draw, maybe. But like King, Queen of Hearts really can't just, I think, check call 10K here.
No, I don't think so.
So that's kind of powerful. And then Garrett sometimes may just shove on you because he can't call.
And you have the nuts.
And we get to call.
Yeah.
The other thing that this does is this sets up a somewhat reasonable river shove.
Which obviously is Andy's plan.
Yes. So by sizing this way, we get to do that.
Right. Should he get to the river this way, though? Should Garrett just be shoving with his set of 5s now?
I mean, it's not completely unreasonable. We could be shutting out all the draws ourselves as Garrett. I mean, there's not much we're losing to. We're losing to pocket 6s. And yes, the occasional 7-9 suited, which can be here and is here.
Yeah.
We're beating pocket 3s, which we know will call. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it's hard to come up with too many hands that are going to call us.
Shut out the flush draws is fine.
Yep. And sometimes they may decide to call if they've got a little something else going on.
Yep.
Ace 4 hearts.
But maybe Garrett just feels like he can play perfectly on the river, like know which cards he's trying to avoid and maybe make a slight mistake here and there every once in a while. But overall, it's better for him to wait to the river for that last 33K to see what happens.
He's sitting there and he's probably thinking, Andy's going to shove the river. That's why I bet 10K. He's doing it to put the 33K in. Why would I want to dissuade that? If I'm ahead, why would I want to dissuade it? If I'm behind, maybe I'll find a card that will either make me ahead or get me, save me the money. Right. Why not let that happen? I feel I trust myself. Right.
And he trusts himself to the deuce of clubs, which does make a 4 straight. It's not ideal. You wouldn't really expect there to be that many 4s in Andy's range, but some of his semi-bluffs do contain a 4. He's going to have ace 4 of hearts. He might have pocket 4s, 4-5 suited, 6-4 suited, hands like that, 3-4 suited. It's possible that he plays them this way. That's obviously bad for Garrett's set of 5s. Yep. So it is a slightly negative event, this card. It's not as bad as a heart, but it's pretty bad.
That said,
is it enough to fold?
I would be paying this off a lot.
I think I would too.
I'd be like, here's my $33,000. Do I get more back? I lose. Okay, I lose.
Yeah,
that's
because it's Andy specifically. That's a big reason. There's a lot of players that this is an easy fold against.
I think most players we can at least strongly consider folding because value here is really not even a set of 6s, right? It's like just straights.
Yeah.
And a lot of players just aren't going to put this money in without a straight.
Yep.
Andy absolutely can. Andy absolutely can bomb with hearts here, missed hearts, for sure. So as Garrett, there's so many combos of that comparatively to straights, I think.
Yeah, but Andy has to be going for it with all of them, which if there's a candidate to go for it with all of them, it's Andy. Yet we see that Garrett's right. And Garrett sometimes is wrong against Andy, but he's right a little bit more often than he's wrong, it feels like.
It does seem like that.
So there could be some sort of a gameplay tell or a physical tell that Garrett has on Andy. I don't know exactly what's going on with that, but he has some reason to fold that seems to have been correct.
It's amazing that he makes this fold. It's like shocking to me.
It is, because against Andy, I would just put the chips in and lose the money.
And you're like, it's not a great story he's telling, right? Like a heart comes, I can fold, and if he had a straight draw, and then he bluffed me, but not the other way around.
No. Interesting stuff. Andy and Garrett, unsolvable, some say. I say no. I say it's solvable. So does Danny Sprung, who's done the solver work here. Let's rip it back to the flop.
Whoa.
The first surprising output from the solver is that it almost never leads Garrett's hand on the flop.
Shocking.
Seems like a good flop to lead. Now, a piece of this that may be a factor is that Danny had to kind of force the solver to think it was heads up because George leaves the hand pretty quick. So
that really does change
it. does change things. If the solver were capable of three-way action, it probably would lead some of the time.
I would think so. That feels like a pretty natural lead three ways, but fair point.
Yeah. Either way, that's the output we got.
Yep.
Get to Andy. Feels like a natural raise. The solver believes so as well. 77% of the time, the solver would like to raise.
Yes.
So cool. Garrett called. We don't have any data on if that's good or bad.
Great.
It's probably great, I'm going to say. On the turn, we may have debated Andy's size a little bit. The solver likes Andy's size. Danny gave Andy the option to bet 75% of the pot or about the size that he did. The solver prefers his size. Likes to go real big here.
I mean, we think Andy did this so he could do a plausible all-in on the river to be 33 into 27, which is ultimately what he does. Perhaps the solver's thinking the same way.
Perhaps. The solver also likes what Garrett is thinking on the turn. It's never raising, never folding, always calling.
Right on.
Feels reasonable, although I could find a raise here.
Absolutely.
Now and then against Andy. But the solver doesn't,
sure.
as we've said before, the solver does not have an Andy button.
Right.
They're working on that.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. Okay, on the river, it does like Andy's jam. Wants to do it 95% of the time.
Yeah, at this point, once Garrett calls the 10K on the turn, I think a jam makes sense.
Sure. Only 86% of the time with Andy's actual hand because he's got hearts blocking Garrett's missed hearts, though.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe the thought is like sometimes bet smaller to try to induce from missed hearts instead of jamming.
I guess, yeah.
That's the only logical explanation I could find.
Yeah, me too.
The solver actually likes Garrett's fold, which is a bit surprising to me because the solver likes to call so much.
It does. There is 4 to a straight out there, and the open ender gets there, right? So that's got to be that's got to be a big reason why the solver wants to fold the hand this strong. We don't block any things around that, but I don't know what we'd be blocking. We're blocking, I guess we block 5-4 suited.
Yeah.
So we sort of do block things around that. I don't know. It's surprising to me too.
It is, but hey, the solver likes it.
All right, you go, solver.
So the AI might not kill Garrett first. When it
It will kill Garrett, and it will kill him very quickly because everyone will die within the first 4 or 5 seconds.
Yeah, but he might be second
singularity.
5. You know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, people may act like, oh, what's 4 more seconds? But when there's only 5 seconds left, that 4 seconds is a big deal.
It's a
man.
big deal.
That was a doozy of a hand. What do you guys think about this? Garrett makes a fold against a guy who, man, I just don't want to fold. I personally do not want to fold against Andy here. But Garrett finds the right fold. The solver agrees. The solver mostly wants to fold too. Do you want to fold as well? Do you think, by the way, these guys could have just gotten it all in? Are even surprised that they didn't earlier on in the hand? Let us know in the comments. We always want to hear what you have to say.
We do, and you can do it on Discord, but forget Discord. There's a link in the description. Surprise plug, it's our book.
What?
Go ahead and buy our book. There's a link to the book in the description of this video. It feels like it's 2019 all over again. No pandemic. Book's available for sale. It still is, though, even during the pandemic.
I can't believe you said that.
Yeah, go get the book. Get out there.